This conference will now be recorded.
All right, I will call the meeting to order. I don't think we need introductions. And there's no summary to review, no public comments, so we can get started right away with our review of Draft 2, Northeast Community Plan.
Jen, I would do a quick little...
starting with Table 2. I think that's a great idea.
Oh,
or do you, and I would do any liaison reports for us?
Yeah, I would do a quick one on that if you want me to do that now.
Go for it.
All right. Let's see. Sort of going chronologically backwards. November 8th was a CREST workshop, and CREST is, I think you guys know, Columbia River Estuary Study Task Force. It was on Goal 5. It was on wetlands. It was very, very good. It was a couple of hours long, and they covered a lot of topics. There was time for questions. So CREST has now completed an informal inventory of potentially significant wetlands for the county, and that's a really good resource for us to have moving forward. Let's see, before that, on October 30th was something called the Private Forest Accord was signed, and you guys may know a little bit about that. It doesn't directly relate to land use planning, but it does relate to buffers along streams and a lot of other things. But buffers along streams is one of the issues that we've been dealing with, and so this is an interesting update. And I'm by far not the expert on this, but for instance, for large and medium fish-bearing streams, the buffers were 20, well, still are 20 feet, and the new private forest accord would extend them out to 110. So that's a difference, and it needs to be made into law, and I don't understand all of that process, but I do think that it will have an impact on land use in Clatsop County, especially where 80% of our land is forestry. And then on October 26th was the countywide comprehensive or citizens advisory who met with the county planning commission. And that was goal 5, and that was draft number 3, I think. If you guys are interested in that, it's available on the county website. And as you recall, it's that huge goal. It's riparian corridors, wetlands, wildlife habitat, wilderness, minerals, energy. It's a whole bunch of stuff. And the thing that I think is interesting for us is that they continued the public meeting on that. And the public hearing is January 11th. So if either of you are interested in having any input or sitting in case you were short on meetings that month, sitting in on the discussion for goal 5, they will meet and take public input on January 11th. And that's all from me.
And that will be a county commissioner meeting or like a special meeting for the comprehensive, like with the planning commission and the county commissioners?
That will be just the planning commission. Yes.
Planning commission. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And prior to that, just to elaborate on what Cheryl just talked about, we had brought it to the Planning Commission this month, and literally the day before the meeting, we received comments back from Department of Land Conservation and Development. And so since nobody had had the chance to read through them, what we agreed to do is we're going to take those comments, incorporate them into a draft 3 or 4 or whatever we're on now, and we're going to bring them back to the joint Planning Commission Countywide Citizen Advisory Committee in December, which is going to be December 28th. And then it'll go back to the Planning Commission on January 11th. So.
Okay. Oh, great. And we've got Dirk here now. Hi, Dirk.
Hey, Dirk, welcome.
Hello. Hello. Yeah, a different computer. I had to spend 5 minutes trying to download the app on the thing. So
Are you under a bunk bed right now?
yeah, this is where my son. This is his office.
Cool.
I'm in my 9-year.
Cheryl just gave us her updates from the liaison meetings and other public meetings she's gone to this over since our last meeting. And then we were going to get started looking at our table 2 new issues and policies worksheet.
I have a quick, it might be like a formatting question before we go to the table 2, if that's okay.
Yep.
I got the printed out thing. Thank you very much, Gail. That's really helpful for me to have it printed. But I do have a question. I'm a little confused with a lot of the policies in the like initial narrative section, like being stricken out, even though it's on the table, it's policies that we've chosen to retain. And so I'm just confused about, are they going to be like listed in a separate place and that's why there's strike through, or I'm just a little confused with the formatting, I think.
Okay. Yeah, so the policies have been pulled out of the narrative and moved to the very end of the plan in the goals, objectives, and policies. Anything that your committee agreed to delete, I deleted and didn't when I moved it and didn't put it through as a strike through underline. So everything that is there is what you've agreed to as it's either been accepted, written as is, or modified. So, but it
Okay,
just
great. So yeah, I was just trying to make sure because that all of this, there's not like separate pieces. It's all together and it just got moved. There's not like, this isn't like an appendix or an addendum or whatever. It's just like all one chunk, but it just got moved to the end, right?
Right, because it's easier, at least for staff, if we're trying to find policies, to not have to go through the whole. We can just go right to the policy section.
1,000% agree. I just wanted to make sure that I was reading it correctly, since it's being moved around from what we've been like dealing with. So
That was a concern for me also, Kelly. It's like the policies were in 3 different places and it took me a while to sort and figure out what was happening. And then, believe it or not, I actually went through the narrative to just double check to see that they indeed had been pulled and were at the end, and they're all there.
Wow, thanks for doing all of that. You're so diligent, Cheryl. All right, anything else before we dive into table 2 then? Actually had one other.
Oh, go ahead.
Just the areas that are still highlighted in blue that need more staff research or input. What will be the process for, like, because this is our last meeting, so once the staff reviews those, does it come back to us, or does it just go to the generic, whatever public comment happens?
Yeah, no, so as much as you might want for this to be your last meeting, it's not. We have one more in December.
Oh.
And that's going to be on December 9th. So
okay.
I have emails out, but just haven't had a chance to follow up with people on a lot of the things that I haven't heard back on yet. So those will all be corrected for your December 9th meeting.
Great. Cool. Thanks. That's awesome. Okay, table 2 then?
I just had one quick, like, nitpicky wording thing. I don't know if this is the time to do that, or if we want to have, like, I don't know, if we want to just focus on table 2 today and I could, like, submit whatever via email, or I don't know how we want to go about it.
What is it, part of the draft?
Yeah.
Narrative plan? Yeah, just go for it.
Okay, it's page 25 on the printed.
Actually, Jen, I also have comments on the draft, and some of mine are just edits, but some of them are questions and concerns. And if Kelly doesn't mind, I would like for us to move through table 2 first, and then whatever time we have left over, we could go through the narration. I have quite a few comments, and I think they're less important than the table 2. So if we run out of time for my comments, so be it.
And I don't mind, like, if we run out of time, can we maybe you and I, Cheryl, can just like email out those comments so that we can all look at them in like before the next meeting, so then we don't have to like go through each one. We can just all have them already and then say yay or nay on them or whatever. Does that sound good?
That works for me if that makes sense to Gail, if process wise that's okay.
Yeah, or if you want to email them to me, then we can get them emailed out to the group before the meeting, and I can incorporate them, and then we can go back and strike and edit in our December meeting.
That sounds great.
Cool. Okay, so the process with this table 2, Gail, do we need to, like, I mean, some of this stuff has wording kind of figured out already. Do we just need to go through this chart and say what we for sure want to keep? And do we need to tell you like where we think it goes? Or if we just want to keep it, then does the staff figure out where in our policy it goes? Or
Yeah, I think that if you already have an idea of which policy section it should be placed under, then definitely make that recommendation. I've got the draft plan open as well, so we can edit and paste in real time. For the most part, everything that's in the table, you'll remember our process has continually refined itself over the years. And so when we first started, we didn't have these tables. So things were just kind of noted and incorporated as we went, but there wasn't a nice table to lay everything out. So what I did was pull all the tables. I think we started using them with Goal 5, and pull all the recommendations that I had from your meetings and put them all in one table. And I haven't incorporated any of this into the most recent draft. So we do need to go through it, and it'll cover a variety of things, mainly from goals 5, 6, 8, and 13, and whatever new issues were identified that we have notes of. So
I have a thought on this, Jen. Again, process-wise, I always like for us to iron out the process first. So this is great. I trust Gail to put these wherever they belong. And as I was working through this today, if wishes were horses, or if we had 5 Gails, I would have wished that these had been put in the appropriate goals and places, but that's a real time-consuming job. So we just have them all sort of clumped here together. But a good use, I think, of our time and energy today is to look at each of these and decide if we want to keep them, dump them, or change them. There are 45 of them, and there are 7 pages of them. And we're good and efficient. I assume that we will make it through all of these and then hopefully have time to go back to the text. But my suggestion is that we trust the professional Gail, and that she puts it in the right place for us, and we just deal with content today.
okay.
That's only one opinion. Kelly and Dirk should say what they think.
That sounds good.
I mean, it's fine with me as long as Gail is fine with it. I want her to consent to that idea. Or because we can also like just note in our little, like as we're going through, we can be like, this makes sense in here too, if that would be easier for you, Gail.
I'm fine with either way. I don't know that unless you really have a place where it's all going to go into the goals, objectives, and policies section. So it's going to be there. It's just a matter of if you really object to it being under a specific heading, I guess would be the concern. But it's all going to be there, whatever you decide to put in.
Are you going to be able to stick them in, I'm assuming before the next meeting, so we'll get the final, like, yes, this goes in the right spot or whatever for the last one?
Yes.
Okay.
And should we just go through them in order, or does anybody have a different suggestion for that? I noticed a couple of kind of duplicate issues, which I've made notes of, so we could skip a couple things that maybe just start at the beginning of. Okay, I labeled my pages 1 to 7. So the first one I'm looking at is protection of riparian areas. Shall we just start there?
Perfect. I also listed my pages, Jen, and I numbered these, so that may help us as we go through too.
Great.
And I can start us off. I'm still in support of number 1, and the wording seems fine to me.
I made those same notes about number 1. Any opposition to this section about riparian areas? Great. Number 2 about Bradwood and Clifton. I don't know enough about this to have an opinion on this one. Should they be historic sites?
I suggest that they do be listed as historic resources in Goal 5, and that seems fine, that we don't need to do a policy, that it would just, I think, then go into the narrative.
Well, I would like to suggest that we do make it a policy, because we do have to go, in order to declare it significant, we have to go through that EC review, in whatever order it goes in, economic, social, energy, and environmental review. So we do have to go through that process, which we won't complete before we're done with our update, but we want to put that, I think, as a reminder policy in there that we want to look at this in the future.
Okay, good. Gail, can you help us with wording for a policy for that one?
Yes, hold on one sec. All right, so I'm putting this under historic area policies. It'll become policy number 7. And basically, I'm going to say that the county should conduct an EC study to determine whether Bradwood and Clifton should be considered significant historic resources.
I love it. Thank you.
Okay, number 3, should the county become a certified local government? My note on this one was just that it's not really Northeast specific. I don't know. I don't remember what the advantages of being a certified local government were.
Yeah, the advantages would be twofold, I guess. One is that it gives us a little more teeth to put in our ordinance to protect historic resources, the ones that we've identified as significant. It also opens the county up for grant funding opportunities, which we wouldn't normally be eligible for if we're not a certified local government.
Mm-hmm.
And the countywide
CAC,
the countywide CAC is struggling with this, and I believe has a policy on it. Gail, because whether or not we become a certified local government is, as Jen pointed out, not specific to the Northeast, is it advantageous for us to have this, or do we need it?
It's probably better placed in the main goal 5 of the comp plan, because I think you're right, it's not specific to any one planning area.
Cool, let's strike it from our table 2. Number 4 is about recognizing all contributors to local history.
And that's just to combine the designation between historic and culture, right? Like to kind of put those as two, because initially they were separated, and that's to put it together. Is that what I remember us talking about? Is that what that's kind of referring to?
Yeah, as I remember, I think the committee thought that it was applicable to both. And I think we were going to combine, and this was part of the main goal 5 discussion. So we can revise the wording to make it applicable specifically to the Northeast if you wanted to.
And my memory is that it's a sort of a value statement, but that it was important to us, and we wanted to say that we should recognize all contributions to local history. It's sort of my memory. So yeah, Gail can help us with the wording on that.
All right, 1 second here. And as I recall, there are no cultural resource goals in the Northeast Comprehensive Plan. So what we could do is we can make this a goal or an under here. And then all the policies underneath that would support it.
Great.
A yes from me.
Okay, number 5, public outreach about how to handle artifacts that might be found on private property. And we have a pretty specifically worded policy here. Which sounded fine to me. Is everybody else still in favor of the county shall, within 2 years of the date of the adoption of this plan, develop a public education and outreach program to inform property owners about how to properly deal with found artifacts?
I'm in
Does
favor.
that date range sound realistic? I mean, I just don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask Gail. Is that realistic to put in the 2 years?
Maybe we should revise that upwards a bit. Our goal is to do a comp plan review every 5 to 7 years. So maybe we could say within 5 years.
Cool. That sounds fine to me.
I like that.
Okay, that'll become policy 8 under historic area policies.
Great.
Okay.
The next one is about a working relationship with the Chinook Indian Nation. And this still feels like an important issue to me also.
And as you all may recall, at the county-wide level, there was extensive discussion on this, and it was decided to not limit it to the Chinook Indian Nation, but Gail will help us remember, I think it's all local Native Americans, tribes, recognized or not, is where we ended up.
Yeah, I think that's how we agreed to put it in the initial part of the narrative. And then after that, we just referred to Native American tribes.
Great. So then we could keep this, but change the Chinook Indian Nation to Native American tribe language. Great. Thanks, Gail. So proposed policy number 7, I'm looking at the bottom of page 1 now, is about impacts of wildfire climate change on groundwater resources. And a policy that we've written down about that, which does still feel relevant to me and I would like to keep.
I also think it's important and relevant, and we should keep it. And we must have thought it was so important. It shows up on the next page again as number 8 and 9.
We listed it, right, we listed it 3 times somehow.
3 times. So maybe Gail can help us figure out where it best goes.
Right. We don't really have any policies right now that specifically address groundwater resources, so I'm going to create a new section. And there we go.
Great.
So.
And that policy was listed under, it's like more wildfire stuff, but wildfire is addressed later on in our table too. And then there was a tectonic uplift, which is also above my pay grade of understanding. But I don't know if that should, does anybody want to address tectonic uplift?
I brought it up, and I'd read about, well, plate tectonics, that the Lower Columbia River was actually gaining altitude or height, and so I don't know anything beyond that. It was rather a scientific abstract, but in all fairness, it's a factor that changes the elevation of property. It's relevant. I've heard that there, but I don't know anything beyond what I've just said.
Okay, do you think it's something that we want to suggest that the county think about over the next 20 years?
I think practically, maybe City of Warrenton is probably dealing with it, more as they have a more developed area. So it could be that we don't need to worry about it on the county-wide level. So
do we want to just, because all of these are kind of, at least as written here, are kind of relating to the groundwater, which we just wrote, instead of, we can just add impacts to groundwater resources caused by climate change, wildfire, like kind of list out some more of these causes together in the.
Sure, just after climate change include wildfire or tectonic uplift.
Okay, I want to make sure I'm putting this in the right place. Let's see. Is this where you wanted it to be put?
Yeah, and then just add that also to your whatever the new policy you created on groundwater resources in the draft. Okay, so the next one, number 10, wind-blown pollution, toxins from overseas and impacts on drinking water or CO2 emissions. We listed that as a potential issue, but didn't write a policy about it.
I think that's above the pay grade again.
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't directly impact land use planning in northeast Clatsop County.
Okay, let's ditch it. Number 11, watershed assessment documents.
I'm in
Is that
support of
anything-
this one, so that the county would support for grants and that they value and support the watershed assessment. That one seems still relevant and important to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm in favor of including this in our policies.
Okay, do we want to keep that with our groundwater policies?
Yeah, I think of it as yeah, relevant to the importance of drinking water and also for wildlife habitat. I forget if there's a, it feels a little bit bigger than just the groundwater.
Okay, do we want to talk about, so if we want to support grant applications, I'm assuming these are, as I recall, are for watershed associations or other organizations. Would it be for restoration projects, monitoring projects? Do we want to specify or just say when they apply for grants?
I like your
Yeah,
vocabulary there,
I wouldn't
Sorry?
limit it. Sorry. I wouldn't limit it to specific types of grants because there's all sorts of things they do, technical assistance and land purchases and all different kinds of things that watershed associations get grant money for. Maybe just like for watershed improvements, but I think that's kind of a given already.
Should this one be more in like a natural resources section, or like, I just don't want it to get like,
I'm thinking.
I don't think we really have a fish and wildlife, natural resources area. We can create one. We've got natural resources, agriculture. Or we can just create a brand new one because we have the power.
Power trips, let's do it.
All right.
can we just take away the distinction that makes it agricultural policies and just put it as another policy under natural resources and have that be a little bit more broad instead of creating a whole new one?
So I think those were tied to our, I'd have to go back and read the narrative to see why it's called.
Or is it tied to agricultural land specifically? Is that what you're thinking? Or
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
I have to go back and read the narrative.
Okay.
Or we can just call it natural resources other and move it up here underneath.
That's fine with me.
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
Yeah, I like natural resources other.
All right. think Jennifer's frozen.
Perfect time to talk about rural internet again, our favorite conversation.
Yes, Jennifer is looking very frozen right now. Oh, she dropped out. Hopefully she will come back.
My internet just cut out for a minute there. I'm back now. Did I miss anything?
We waited for you.
Oh, great.
We missed you, but we waited for you.
Oh, thanks, guys. The storms really mess with my antenna-based internet service out here. Okay. So number 12, we've got this note about sea level change, saltwater intrusion. This seems to me to be covered on our other policy that we already had about groundwater resources caused by climate change. Those seem like related enough that we don't need another thing here. Great, I see Kelly nodding. Is that good with you, Cheryl and Dirk?
Yep.
Okay, so we're just gonna ditch this. Okay, number 13, we're at the bottom of page 2 here. Balancing wildlife habitat preservation and housing. This one seemed important to me also. And we have a note about clustering development, and I thought maybe if we just phrase it to say like the county shall encourage clustered development and prioritize keeping open space in an effort to protect wildlife habitat and migration corridors.
Yeah, I like that wording, Jen. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we can include a mechanism where clustering is allowed to happen, you know, with because typically you have your zones, your R1 or R2 or whatever they are, and you can't put more than one house on an acre. So somehow a land use mechanism whereby clustering can be facilitated through the land use process. Otherwise, you can't cluster. It's not allowed. So. And
clustering's already addressed in the housing section, so I don't know if we just want to add more of, you know, wildlife habitat and corridors as a reason, additional reason for that there, or put another emphasis somewhere else.
Yeah, so long as it's covered somewhere, you can't have clustering if you don't have a mechanism having it. So somehow it needs to be encouraged if that's what we want to have happen.
Yeah, because it says in the housing policies too, the clustering of dwellings shall be encouraged to maintain the rural character of the area, provide the best utilization of the land, and to reduce housing costs. I mean, we could add a like, and promote wildlife, you know, corridors or whatever onto that, or.
I think somehow development of a land use management tool to facilitate cluster developments, because encouraging still doesn't create a mechanism for you to be able to do it legally. So.
So you're suggesting another policy under the housing policy section here?
If that's appropriate, I don't know, Gail. You would.
Yeah, it sounds good to me, Dirk.
Yeah, and to make it so that there can be more low income housing in our rural area was one of the goals that we've talked about over and over. And as I read through the whole thing today, I feel like we didn't really address that in the housing one. So yes, Dirk, if there's a way for us to put something in there that's not in there now, that's legal, I think that would be good.
Yeah, and hopefully this could help allow that to happen, where zoning is a big component of that affordability factor. So allowing clustering potentially could create economics of scale or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Gail, are we getting where we want to go? Do you have other suggestions for us?
Well, I added the language for the maintain and protect wildlife corridors to policy 2. And then I created a new policy 5 that says the county shall review and revise its codes to allow cluster developments in all areas of the county.
Do we want
That's
to like maybe say like in order, like, I don't know, to be more specific about low income, like to, you know, provide more opportunities for lower income housing, or specifically with like, you know, I don't know. In that housing study, they talked about like different kinds of housing developments, you know, that could address these issues. I don't know if we want to be a little bit more specific or if we want to be more broad.
I think she's got it now, the language
And
to address your.
workforce
Yeah,
housing. Yeah.
This
And
is Ian. I have a comment and a question on the cluster development concept. So we currently allow cluster developments. I think you can even do it in the RA1 and RA2 and 5 zones. But the rural version of cluster development is not the same as the urban version of cluster development, which I think you might be picturing when you say cluster development. That would be like a cottage cluster, which is a housing type that was discussed in the housing study. But the quote unquote cluster development that's provided for in our current code, that's basically a different form of subdivision where the minimum lot sizes are still bottoming out at 1 acre. It's not like a single lot with multiple dwellings on it that's kind of condominiumized, which you would see in an urban area, with, you know, a grouping of small cottages or tiny homes or something like that. It's really just a different way of laying out a subdivision where you get to have smaller lots in exchange for leaving the rest of the area as common open space. So it's more of an open space preservation tool than it is a housing density affordability tool.
so are you saying in rural areas of the county, there just isn't an option for housing density?
Well, we don't allow for cluster development, or sorry, we don't allow for cottage clusters. That would be more of an urban housing type. I think the maximum housing density we have is 2 dwellings on a single parcel. So duplexes or a single family dwelling with an ADU. But a cottage cluster is usually, you know, 4 or more dwelling units together, very close together.
And
I think if you want to do affordable housing, that's it. So you got to figure out how to do that.
right. And so Ian hasn't been in my brain this afternoon as I've been working on goal 10, but one of the recommendations that came out of the housing study is this concept of cottage cluster development. And so when we go to the board on December 8th with goal 10 for their initial policy direction, one of the questions that we're going to be asking is this a policy that the board would support putting in, because it would be, as long as there is adequate land available to support a septic system for that type of development, there should not be a reason.
Yeah.
Well, without I'm going to put my foot in my mouth, but we would want to check with the state. But it may be possible to do that type of development in a rural land area.
Yeah, that's good. I just think it's important to use to distinguish between a quote unquote cluster development, which is defined in our code as a type of subdivision, versus a quote unquote cottage cluster, which is something different, which is, I think, what we're all thinking of when we're talking about cluster development right now.
Well, since that one's about potentially reviewing and revising, we could switch out cluster with cottage, just because that kind of means that it's going to be changed anyways. Does that kind of make sense to you, Ian?
Yep, definitely.
I like the idea of the limiting factor being seeing that the septic requirements are adequately met, and if you know, if that could allow for a fourplex or a more of a condominium style type thing,
Mm-hmm.
the limiting factor is the value of property. If you want to have affordable housing, you have to have the ability to be able to utilize that land more efficiently, in my opinion. So somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Great. Okay. I feel good about this one. Anybody want to say anything more about this before we move on? Okay, I'm looking at page 3 of table 2 now. The next one is about the need to make residents and visitors aware of wildlife and safety. This seems like something that we dealt with already in their like parks and recreation section. Is it not addressed in one of those policies?
I think we may have addressed it in part in Goal 8, recreational needs, and I'm almost positive that we have something along those lines in Goal 5 for wildlife habitat because it came out of that Elk Solutions project.
Cool. Is everybody okay with ditching this one for our Northeast plan then? Okay. Okay, the next one, wildfire impacts. There's a better, we address it later on with a real policy on page 6 of this table. So I vote that we skip it for right now. Okay. Encroaching development may have impacts if zoning of surrounding properties is changed. This was listed as an issue with no policy. Does anybody want to do anything about this one? Let's ditch it. Climate change unknown impacts. Ditch it. Wind power generation or offshore power generation. I don't know much about this one still. I think we address like alternative energies. In some of the discussion about solar stuff later on. So
Yeah,
my
memory is that we do have a policy about wind power and solar, and offshore power generation I don't think would directly impact us over here in the Northeast.
So we'll ditch it. Protection of drinking water supplies and sources. Consider an acquisition program to acquire lands around drinking water sources or supplies. That's still something that I think would be very cool. I think it's probably very far-fetched. But we're dreaming here, right? Derek, we can't hear you.
Pretty poor connection here. I don't know if anybody can hear me.
I can now.
Yeah, I can't hear anybody.
Dirk, did you want to say something about this acquiring lands?
I've kind of lost the thread of the conversation, to be honest. So.
Okay. Gail, is this one too crazy?
So.
Is this one too crazy to add a policy about acquiring lands around drinking water sources?
Could we write one of those like we did?
Subjective question.
Could we write one similar to the one that we wrote to support grants and proposals and things like that for the watershed councils? Can we do similar one here? Does that make any sense? Do you know where I'm going?
All right, so Clatsop County should support voluntary acquisition programs to acquire lands around drinking water sources supplies. Does that capture what we want?
I like it.
And do you want that under natural resources or groundwater policies?
I say the new natural resources other.
That sounds good to me. Okay, the next one is ocean thermal energy conversion, which I did a little bit more research on and seems pretty cost prohibitive at this point and probably unlikely to work here because you need like warmer waters. So I say we ditch it.
And again,
Yeah,
I
it's a
think
north,
that's not
not a north.
specific to North Sea.
Okay, the last one on page 3 about energy sources should be renewable. We have a policy written out here. Encourage the use of energy generating technologies such as solar panels, wind energy, geothermal heat pumps, and other developing energy sources in order to reduce transmission costs and pollution generated by the consumption of regionally produced and oriented energy sources. And that sounds good to me. And I would like to include that. Okay.
Okay, so for that one, we have no energy policies, so I'm going to create a new section here.
Awesome. Okay, we're on to page 4 of table 2. Electric vehicles and charging stations. The first line of this policy is a little confusing to me about electric vehicles being used to power homes, which I think is true, but maybe not like the most pertinent information to include in our comprehensive plan. But I do like the idea of encouraging installation of charging stations and more infrastructure for electric vehicles.
Or should we say allowing the installation? You know, allowing it, and just to make sure that's permitted use or permitted.
Yeah, you can install an electrical vehicle charging station, and I wouldn't see any reason you couldn't install it at your home. If you were going to install that at your home and then rent it out for profit as a business, that might be something different. But if it's just for your personal use, then you can do that right now.
Yeah, I did it. It's awesome.
Do we need to say anything, or is it helpful?
Can we put that in our energy policy section, or is that energy policy? Just that the county shall encourage the installation of, like, I think it'd be great if there were another public charging station in the Napa area somewhere. Got to get all the way to Clatsop before you can charge up again.
Okay, so let's put the vehicle charging for residential construction. Let's stick one of those under housing policies, be policy 6. And then, I'm sorry if I'm making everybody dizzy flipping through these things. Water, energy, okay. They're not really commercial. What are they?
Like a public use, yeah. Yeah. Nailed it, Gail. Thanks. All right, the next one is about solar. Incentivize the installation of solar panels through low interest loans or tax abatement exemption programs. And then also, we had that whole discussion about using agricultural lands, like sharing sheep and solar panel. That was a very engaging conversation we had many months ago. And I would like to keep this. It's, I think we maybe already put it in. We may have already addressed it in our other policies because it's in the table, like the table 1. It's in there already.
Yeah, I think there was originally something in the community plan.
I don't remember anything originally in the community plan. And Jen, if it's already in there, I'm glad you caught it. The wording on this one was by request from my neighbor, former Ed Johnson, who had read some things that had been written about combining small scale solar and agriculture. So I would definitely like to leave this in unless it's already in there.
Great, I agree.
Right. The only policy I'm seeing, I could have sworn it was in there, but maybe it's in the narrative that we put it in.
Oh yeah, policy 7.
That's the existing one.
Shall be encouraged to locate here. Can we just tack on our other wording here?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Do we want to make it a separate policy?
Seems like the same topic to me. The next one is about public utility districts. We never wrote down a policy about it, but it was brought up that you can maybe get better utility rates if we had one.
You could have local control of your power, right? So right now, Pacific Core is owned by Berkshire Hathaway, which is not a local company. So, so I don't know. I'd like to see it in there just as a, just to create an awareness that there are alternatives, in my opinion. But whatever the group wants to do is fine. And this may not be an appropriate document to keep it in. I don't know if it's relevant.
I'm into it. I would love to see local control over utilities.
Okay.
I would like to have a policy in there, and maybe Gail can help us with wording. Maybe it's one of those, the county shall encourage blah, blah.
Blah, blah.
Local, locally operated power utilities, for the sake of resiliency, among other things.
Yes, resiliency is a good word to put in there.
All right, replacement of appliances. Do we feel like this is an important policy to include?
I think it's already a fact of life, isn't it? Pretty much anytime you buy anything.
I think so too. Let's ditch it. Nuclear power plant, we said already to remove from Goal 5 inventory. I think you've done that, right?
Yes, we have.
Perfect. Retrofitting. Support organizations and programs that assist homeowners to retrofit and upgrade to energy efficient technologies and appliances. I could take it or leave it. I think that it's kind of I think that's what people are doing. Does anybody feel like there's a reason to keep this one in there? That's a no from Dirk. Let's ditch it. Need to reduce waste and single-use products. Encouraging businesses to reduce the amount of single-use and recyclable customer products.
I agree with the concept, but I don't think it's really a comprehensive land use issue.
I agree. Let's ditch it.
A larger issue is people throwing away trash where it shouldn't be thrown away. And
Yeah, like in the forest or the recycling bins.
yeah, so I don't know if that should be some kind of I don't know, maybe we don't need it here, but that's the bigger issue, is getting people to put their garbage where it belongs. And
You're
that
thinking like
does
some
affect
kind of like public shaming system for anybody caught throwing appliances out.
There's it.
Yeah.
Access to forests is being, curtailed because people are using the forest as a land, as a land a dump. So.
A landfill. Yeah. Yeah, I agree that that's an issue, but I don't know that this is the place to address it.
Yeah, it's a tragic problem in our county, I think. Okay, I'm on page 5 of table 2 now. There's no issue, but there's a note to support Clatsop Chinook concerns about hydropower. I don't remember discussing that. Does anybody remember the context around that?
I think that was about the low dams, like not promoting the low profile dams in the rivers and streams.
And the county CAC, to the best of my memory, addressed that.
Great, let's ditch it. Okay, next is the section about wildfires. And this seemed like the better worded section about wildfires. Talking about increasing public awareness of indirect hazards of wildfire, like air and water pollution and subsequent increase in landslide and flooding risks. And that sounds, I would like to keep this one in our the natural disasters or the hazards one.
Okay, and we have no existing policies for natural hazards, so.
Oh, really? That was
we had a lot of discussion in the narrative, but no policies.
Oh, okay.
So all the rage now is prescriptive burning in order to prevent, catastrophic wildfire. Somehow the prescriptive management techniques should be, not discouraged when appropriate. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right, bear with me for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Gail. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one is about solid waste disposal site. trying to identify a future site for a biodigester, other system for temporary treatment or storage of septage, which does still feel relevant to me.
Yeah, and just so you know, the county is actually working on this right now, trying to find a place for an anaerobic digester.
Cool.
Yeah, there's supposed to be a meeting tomorrow, but my question, I think, and when you put something in a biodigester, you still take things out of it, and they don't magically disappear. And I think there seems to be this idea that if you put it in there, that it'll go away somewhere. And I don't think that's been determined that it magically goes away. So, but that may be the result of a feasibility study that'll probably be conducted by the county. We'll find out. That's an unanswered question, I suppose, at this stage.
I like this
So
one.
yeah, do you think it makes
And I'm wondering if we can just add, Clatsop County will work with private and public landowners. If we can add and public for both this one and the one below it.
Yeah, the Port of Astoria and Warrenton are both very much interested in this, and all the local breweries, businesses, if it can do what people hope it does.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so I think these would fit under our public facilities policies.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so they will become policies 10 and 11 under public facilities.
Great. The next one is about coordinating stormwater treatment. Establish a comprehensive set of development standards for stormwater management. This isn't something I know a lot about. Is this a relevant issue? Anybody?
I think it's more of a city issue, but where you
Right,
have
septic.
inundation of a stormwater system into a septic facility.
Yeah. And the
I don't think
only area where I can think of where it might be applicable might be out in the Westport area, because they are more dense development out there.
there is a facility there. Yeah, I look forward to that. They do have a facility of some sort, I think.
Does anybody feel like they want to keep this policy in our plan?
I don't think so, but
Let's ditch it. Establish noise standards for home occupations. That seems relevant, or I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the policies are. Is there nothing about noise standards right now for rural areas?
We have general language for home occupations that talks about noise and glare and things like that. I think these were, I'm trying to remember what the context was for this.
I feel like it came up when that newspaper article happened about the guy who was repairing cars out of his house.
Yeah, there was that one. Oh, and then we had the guy with the power tools who's making furniture, which I know internally we struggled with. So.
Yeah, I think that's where that came from, Gail, is when we got to goal 6, maybe.
Yeah.
And this was more of a countywide topic because we have general home occ standards, and the one for noise right now just says noise shouldn't be emitted in a manner likely to cause offense or something like that. So it doesn't give us much teeth as far as enforcing anything. But it's more of a countywide issue probably than specific to the Northeast area.
Great, let's ditch it. Thank you. All right, I'm on page 6 out of 7 on table 2. We're nearing the end, folks. We have a comment about needing to separate food and organic waste from other solid waste and encourage composting. I don't know if this is Northeast specific either. I think that
it's not really land use plan.
Right. Let's ditch it. Population changes and demographics. Looking at how projections will affect recreational needs and amenities. Installing bilingual directional informational signs at facilities. That all sounds good to me still. Can we add that to our recreational areas policies?
Yes, we can. I'm looking for them right now. All right, policies 5 and 6.
Great. The next one is about smoke and wildfires. And is maybe a little bit repetitive from the last wildfire policies that we added. But it does address best management practices related to wildfire prevention. The other one was more about like public awareness about like health risks. So this first line about management practices, we could maybe keep. But the rest of it feels repetitive to what we've already added. Any other thoughts on that one, team? Cool. The next one is master plan is out of date. I don't know if this is Northeast specific. Is there a reason to keep this in here about updating the master plan? Did I lose the internet again?
Yeah, kind of coming and going a little bit.
Okay.
Could be. So I don't know.
Okay. At Aldridge, point to table 11. I didn't get to reference table 11. Does anybody know what that is?
I'm not sure what that is either. It could be a typo on my part, but I'm still not sure what we wanted to accomplish with that.
What's table 11?
We're not sure.
It's right next to Area 51.
Would it have been in the section, like in like the registry of like camping resources? I mean, I think it came out of that month's discussion where there was like a list of all of the parks and a list of all of the.
Yeah, Aldridge Point is privately owned, and so it's kind of a
oh,
weird
the
thing
boat, was it a boat dock? A boat dock thing?
Yeah,
so there's Napa dock.
Yeah, Jennifer, my memory is that it was a list of possibly public access to the river. And I may have asked for Aldridge Point to be added to that table. But I don't remember offhand what table 11 is. And
You're correct, Cheryl. Sorry to interrupt. I just looked it's in the 2006 Parks and Recreation Lands Master Plan, and table 11 is public water access to rivers and streams.
Great.
So Aldridge Point is privately owned, and I think Clatsop County has an agreement with a private owner to maintain the status quo. So they'll want to maintain their rights, but also allowing access. So I don't want to make anything that would make them shy away from that. I don't know.
Yeah, we did also include some discussion on the boat ramp at Aldridge Point, just a little brief blurb in our narrative when we talked about recreation facilities in the Northeast.
And it does note there that it's privately owned. That seems good enough to me. Need more camping facilities on state-owned forest lands.
I don't think so.
Let's ditch it.
You got to
And on the
maintain.
last page. Okay, proper park and outdoor etiquette. Establish an educational program to inform park users about safety and proper ways to interact with nature in order to preserve it. And this is talking about like placards at county parks.
Yeah, and I think that was in conjunction with our Goal 8 discussions.
Does this still feel relevant to people? It seems fine to me, but not like, yeah. Let's add it. The recreational areas policies. And can we just tack on and interpretive signage as appropriate at the end of that and kind of combine it with the next one that we have? Posted permitted activities. Yeah. Great, and the last one is reduce herbicide and pesticide use. That the county shall minimize or eliminate the use in public parks in order to reduce runoff into streams and protect public health. That still sounds good to me.
I would like to keep that one.
There is a management issue with the county. We had the county commission in the past has had the conversation with the road department in terms of herbicide usage, and there is an economic argument. I think there should be you want to eliminate runoff for sure, but just because you spray something doesn't mean there's runoff. So I'm making that designation. I think reducing or eliminating runoff would be good, but eliminating herbicides isn't necessarily going to solve your problem, I think, in terms of maintaining your properties. So I don't know if that could be parsed. I would be in favor of minimizing or eliminating runoff from herbicides and pesticides, but not eliminating the use of pesticides and herbicides.
Yeah, good wording change. I think that gets us where we were trying to go.
Yeah, that sounds good to me too. So that gets us to the end of our table. Nice work, everybody. Are there any other new additions that anybody wanted to bring forward? Sounds like a no. So should we call it a day then? Or did Kelly and Cheryl want to talk about some of the language from the draft plan that you guys had notes on? I've got about 10 more minutes.
I'm fine with just submitting them to Gail and having it go on the next, and then we can see it and talk about it at the same time, which might be
That sounds
helpful.
good to me. That sounds like a more efficient use of time.
Is there anything else that we need to do today? We've still got about a little less than 40 minutes.
You think we're in good shape, Gail?
I'm sorry, what was that, Jen?
Do you think we're in good shape, or is there? Do you want us to look over anything else today?
I understand you're limited in time, and I'm fine with everybody emailing me their narrative comments, unless you want to take a few minutes to go through those right now. I just want to say our December meeting is our December meeting's in January, and it's going to be December 9th. So our agenda will go out on the 2nd of December. And then we've got Thanksgiving next week. So I think I would need to have all your comments no later than the end of the day on November 30th. Will that be possible for everybody to get me comments by then?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Other than that, as you go through the plan, the only other thing I can think of is where I've got some of these areas in blue, and if you have any information that you are aware of that you can share, that would be helpful as well. Like I said, we're still trying to track down information, and some of it may just not be relevant anymore, like fire ratings. I don't know, do we even know what the fire department is rated? In a way it matters, but people are going to build houses out there regardless of what the rating is. So
right.
Years ago, it might have made more sense. But otherwise, that's all that staff had for this evening.
Gail, can you send me a form that I can write comments to the right or on it or something? And it needs to be simple and straightforward. I'm not too good with that fancy dancy stuff.
Okay, when you say a form, what are you looking for, Cheryl?
Actually, okay, yeah, I mean format, so not a form, but so if you could send me the narrative so that I could, an editable format of the narrative.
Okay, so basically if I increase the margins, give you more writing space, that will take care of it?
Yeah, one that I'm able to edit onto. Perfect, yes.
Cool. Then we'll see you guys next month. Good meeting today, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Gail.